Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. My name is Ayuba Ilya, and today, today is an interesting day. Tuesday, the 8th of March, and it's World International Day. And of course, I'm not alone, although my co-anchor is on the high table this morning.
Glad to be here. My name is Zainab Bala, and I'm super excited to be here today because it's International Women's Day. Ayuba, how did you forget today that it's 8th, of March? How did you forget that date?
No, definitely, I did forget that. Maybe it's a slip of tongue, so forgive me for that. But, I'm just curious about this green thing. What's it about green today?
Yeah, green.
I've been seeing a lot of women wearing green this morning.
Yeah, green is actually the color for this year's, International Women's Day. Green, pink, and one other color, orange. Green, pink, and orange is the color for this year's International Women's Day.
Okay, so any symbolism around that, or what's the significance of those? Why the choice of those colors? I'm just curious.
I think it's one of those colors for the United Nations, Alliance to actually celebrate women this year's, and I think it dates back way back in the 1990s. So this year's color actually symbolizes peace, symbolizes women standing up together and then to break the barriers that we're facing.
Well, quite interesting, really. We'll be talking a lot more about this on the program today. And of course, as always, we'll be bringing you the dailies on Daybreak and, of course, the Today in History, as always. Now, we'll take a look at the news highlights right away. Now, a federal high court in Abuja has restrained President Muhammadu Buhari, the Attorney General of the Federation, the Independent National Electoral Commission, the Senate President, the Speaker, and others from refusing to implement the newly passed Electoral Act as it is. Now, Justice Inyang Eko, in a ruling on Monday, also restrained the Senate President, Speaker, the INEC, and 7 others from acceding to Buhari's request that the National Assembly revokes the new Electoral Act by deleting Section 84, subsection 12 of the new law. The ruling follows a motion ex parte for interim injunctions filed by the People's Democratic Party. The judge said that the interim orders are to subsist pending the determination of the plaintiff's motion on notice for interlocutory injunctions.
Okay, and now for some politics. Leadership crisis rocking the ruling All Progressive Congress took a new dimension on Monday when armed security men took over the national headquarters of the party in Abuja. No official explanation has been given by the party for the heavy security presence at the secretariat, but there are speculations that the move is to oust the national chairman of the APC caretaker committee, Mai Mala Buni, which the party has denied. Now, in a statement on Monday, National Secretary of the caretaker committee, John Akpanu Dede, said Buni is still in charge of the party. He said the attention of the party has been drawn to sponsored media reports on an imaginary leadership change in the All Progressive Congress Caretaker and Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee, describing the reports as fake news and should be disregarded. Earlier, the governor of Niger State, Abubakar Bello, arrived at the National Secretariat of the APC and took over the affairs of the party as the new National Caretaker Committee chairman. On arrival, Governor Bello party faithful referred to him as the chairman while he entered into a closed-door meeting with some party chieftains.
All right, now on the foreign scene, that is the French President Emmanuel Macron has accused his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin of hypocrisy and moral cynicism after Moscow announced it will open humanitarian corridors from several Ukrainian cities, but only to Russia and Belarus. Moscow has announced a temporary ceasefire and a plan to evacuate Ukrainians from several cities. Meanwhile, delegations from Ukraine and Russia are set to hold a third round of talks. The UN has warned that Russia's invasion has triggered the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. That's that for the news highlights. Now let's take a look at the events that made history on this day, the 8th of March.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19,
is an infectious disease
caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19 or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others at least 2 meters even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority.
This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital. Now, we had our Today in History, and I saw something very interesting, Z. Did you see the first helicopter that was, launched back in 1946? I mean, I'm just wondering if, you've just eaten and then you climb on that helicopter, or perhaps maybe some woman who is pregnant and decide to embark on that. I'm wondering what will happen, because the way it is jump-starting like a butterfly.
It's going to really be
very funny.
Yeah, it's going to really be a very bumpy ride. And for a woman who is pregnant getting on that helicopter, it's going to be labor straight away.
I mean, that just shows you how much technology has evolved over the years. And how we are doing better, right now. So it's quite interesting to see that. Now, today is World International Women's Day. I mean, we cannot overflock that, because there's going to be a lot of discussions, trust me, especially against the backdrop of the recent rejection of the National Assembly for all the gender bills. Talking about increase of the number of seats of National Assembly and designate some for women, about 111 of that, and then talking about the 35% affirmative action, talking about indigenship for women, in states and all that, quite a number of issues. But we'll leave that for now. Now, let's take a look at the dailies, and that will be shortly after this breather. Please stay.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right. Thank you for staying with us. Now, taking a look at the dailies on Daybreak this morning. The Daily Trust newspaper, quite a lot of stories this morning, 71 pages, of the paper. And then we have the lead story that talks about APC crisis. Buni's fate hangs as Bello takes charge. Now, recall yesterday we had this scenario in the Secretariat of the APC, the National Secretariat, where there seemed to be some kind of chaos. A lot of security personnel deployed to that spot. And then we heard that the governor of Niger State there took over leadership, and then there was no word about what happens to Buni and what happens, even from the presidency, we didn't hear anything. And many people are wondering. I'm sure you would like to get details of that, and you would find it on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper. It has the riders that says, I have Buhari's blessing to act, and that's according to Niger governor. You see how governors plotted coup, and then NEC decides on Yobe governor Tuesday, that is today, and then presidency and Buni, their mom, about this. Very contradictory. The secretary of the APC committee was also, debunking that statement as not correct. But again, during the inauguration of the state chairman, we saw the secretary of the party at that venue. So it was quite confusing, really, yesterday. Now, you have also other stories there. Sunday Igboho freed, barred from leaving Benin Republic. You'd find that on page 4. The next story, special edition, International Women's Day 2022. You would have all of that. Break the bias. I think that's the theme for this year. You'd find that on page 27 up to 46 is all about Women's International Day. The pictorial shows you the suspended DCP Abba Kyari alongside ACP Sunday J. Ubia, ASP James Bauer, and other suspects arraigned on drugs charges at the Federal High Court in Abuja yesterday. The story below there says, codeine dealing, don't send me to prison, Kyari begs and pleads not guilty. You'd find that on page 3 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Below that, at the very bottom, you'd find the story that says, court stops Buhari, others from tampering with new electoral act. 5 die while digging sand to build groom's house. And then the last story there, oil firms owe Federation 1.3 trillion naira 2020 revenue. That's that for Daily Trust this morning.
Let's take a look at some more stories on The Punch this morning. The Punch leads with the story about governors dump Buni, back Bello as confusion reigns in APC. And then some of the riders there states, I don't know Buni's position. I have Buhari's blessing, says Niger governor. Buni remains chairman. Governors behind him on treatment abroad. And this is according to his aide. No change of leadership in APC, declares caretaker panel secretary. And then you find other stories right at the top on page 32. FIRS, others revenue collection cost rises by 49%, hits 329 billion naira. And also you'd find other stories on page 27, page 32, and page 13. NMPC moves to acquire federal government power plants, meet BPE. And then there's a story about customs bow to pressure, suspend evaluation of imported vehicles. National Assembly may suspend Electoral Act amendment sought by President Muhammadu Buhari. And then there's a pictorial there also that shows you, says drug ring, Kyari, others remanded Co-accused pleaded. This was in court yesterday. And then you find other stories on the Punch as well. Igboho can't leave Benin Republic despite release. And this is according to a lawyer. Missing Lagos corpse recovered. BRT driver arrested. Lawyers tackle Lagos. And then you find other stories. Alhaji lied. Falai resigned. 2 million naira UK transfer false. And this is according to his spokesman. Now, these are some of the major stories on the Punch this morning.
All right. Now, let's take a look at The Guardian and see how The Guardian puts the stories this morning. Clearly, the story about the APC's removal of the chairman of the CPC is everywhere. Now, APC crisis, why Buhari approved Buni's sack, and that's according to Guardian. The writer says party's neck to ratify CPC's chair removal next week. Bello mom as group decries dismissal. Ex-PGF DG explains his misdeed. You'd see also other stories that says excitement as Benin Republic grants Igboho conditional release. 26 killed, many injured as herders sack Taraba community. Body of missing 22-year-old BRT girl found on Qatar Bridge. And then you see also FG gives committee 3 months to renegotiate with ASU. IWD, it's time to break the glass ceiling. Now, below the pictorial there, you see women seek end to discrimination, demand gender equality in leadership and employment. These are some of the stories on the front page of The Guardian this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at the stories making waves on the Blueprint newspaper this morning. APC leadership, confusion as Sani Bello takes over, Buni's fate uncertain. And the writers there, I have Buhari's blessing as acting party chair. Don't know UB governor's position. No change in leadership. This is according to Akbanu Doide. Buni party scribe may resign today. Buhari never endorsed Adamu, and this is according to Governor Badaru. You find other stories on the Blueprint newspaper this morning. Scarcity, relief as NMPCL places 48 Abuja stations on 24-hour service. Oh, that's a relief, but I do hope that it becomes efficient. You find other stories on the Blueprint newspaper. Igboho regains freedom after 231 days in detention. Why activists can't leave Benin Republic now. This is according to his counsel. Hunters Council trains 700 to confront banditry in Northwest. You also see the story on page 20 about cocaine deal. Abakari's co-accused persons plead guilty. Ganduje, Emir of Kano, others unveil Dala dry pot logo in Abuja. And on page 16 on the Blueprint, you'll see the story about CVR. INEC registers another 6.6 million in third quarter. Court stops Buhari, others from further amending Electoral Act 2022. And on page 14, you'll see the story about Lassa fever kills 98 in 2 months nationwide. That's quite alarming. On page 22, on the Blueprint, banks borrowing from CBN stands at 666 billion naira. These are some of the major stories on the Blueprint.
All right, now take a look at The Nation. The paper is not any different from the many others. The same story that leads on The Nation newspaper. It says, confusion in APC over caretaker boss, Buni's fate. It has the writers that says Niger Governor Sani Bello takes over, Yobe Governor rushing back from Dubai. Now, there are other stories, of course. Above the nameplate there, you see family of slain lady on Lagos BRT demands justice. Crisis raiding Oshun, PDP holds primary. Adeleke battles Babayemi. And then you see also, we fled Ukraine, dodging Russian bullets and bombs. Nigerian students reflect relief ordeal. And then you see also freed Igboho to remain in Cotonou. And then there's the last story there, an 80 51 oil. Gas firms owe federal government 1.32 trillion naira. ICPC, EFCC, NFIU go after defaulters. Agency seeks details of subsidy beneficiaries. These are some of the stories on the dailies this morning. Now let's get perspectives on some of these stories. We have in the studio Sunday Michael, the deputy business editor of Daily Trust newspaper, to give us perspectives on this. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Zainab, I hope I have a pink on my shirt. Solidarity.
It's solidarity to the women.
Solidarity with the women, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, well, quite interesting. You
you
do have some pink, but well, that's putting me on the spot right now.
Ayuba, you are supposed to, have a touch of either green, pink, or orange. What happened?
Trust me, I'm going to change immediately after the show. So I'm going to do that for you. All right, now, clearly, the political story this morning, virtually on all the 5 papers we, read out, they are all leading with the same story, showing the magnitude of this. All eyes are on the APC, and quite chaotic, really. It looks like a coup, because when the national secretary of a committee comes out to debunk something that looks more like true, and then describe it as false, and what does that say about what's really going on?
I think the APC had continued to flourish with the same kind of body language that we have seen, if you like, in the last 2 years. I don't think it was just about the national secretary. It's beginning to appear like the modus operandi of the ruling party, because even the man who is said to be the acting chairman himself, within minutes of sitting there, said he's also merely just acting. And then the next minute he says he has the blessings of the president to act. And I was wondering whether you need, if somebody is away temporarily, do you really need a presidential blessing,
to act?
Given that you are a member of the caretaker committee, as it were. And everything we saw yesterday was breaking with their tradition of passing the baton to the secretary once the chairman is away, temporarily, as the case may be. So there are conflicting signals coming from that place, and background information, as reported by the paper, suggested that some governors canvassed for his removal, and that the national secretary, left the country abruptly. However, now we are told he left for medical reasons, and preparation for the 26th of March convention has to be in top gear, so somehow it has to move on. Makes some sense on the one hand, but why this is a very big confusion is Buni has always operated with the blessings of some governors. So basically what this is telling us is a massive crack, within the ranks of the governor, largely owing to the various interests that are playing up ahead of the March 26th primary.
I mean, how dicey is it, as a matter of fact, when you look at the 26th of March is just, barely 3 weeks from now, and we're having this kind of, things happening. This shows that even at the national level, there are issues. It's not just, the subnationals here.
Yeah, they've always been issues, and that is why, for instance, since 2020, when Oshomole was ousted, the party has been under the control of the governors. They've not been able to get a national chairman, as with the opposition parties, to fully take charge of the party's affair. It's been one major issue or the other, different people in different camps trying to take positions, largely ahead of the 2023 presidential election. It starts with the party primary. It starts with the party chairman's position. So there has been, and of course, it was in recognition of these various issues and aggrieved party members that they set up the reconciliation committee that was headed by Abdullahi Adamu to try to close ranks, ahead of the convention. So we are going to see more of this rancor, if you like, or this drama, largely because, again, the governors who are pushing for his sack we want to do that using the instrumentality of the party. And so I think they are thinking of a neck today, tomorrow, you know, to properly rectify that action and maybe confirm whoever is acting. The people on the other side are also pushing. And this whole thing was largely because they said they cited the court papers that seem to have procured a court judgment, you know, preventing them from holding the March 26 convention. And by the way, remember the convention has been shifted 3 times already. And so everybody is becoming agitated. The longer it is taking, you know, the more difficult it is making it for people to actually conclude on their plans and concretize on what they want to do.
You know, Sunday, Niger State Governor, you know, taking charge. A lot of people did not see that coming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it took everyone by surprise. He showed up at the party secretariat, parked where the chairman was supposed to park, and then had people already hailing and calling him chairman. And then he proceeded to sit on the seat of the chairman. And the usual practice, whenever anybody was acting, was to reserve the seat of the chairman, even though you are acting, but to take a different seat. His body language suggests that he coverts. I mean, it's something he looks forward to doing and enjoys it. You know, the way he spoke glamorously about that position. But his speeches at difference with what is being said. And we understand also that he went on to hold crucial meeting with State Party Chairman last night, you know, after all the charade, all the drama we saw at the Secretariat. So I think, like I rightly mentioned, that we are in for more drama. And that is not to cast aspersion on the person of Bello, but I'm wondering, for a state where over 30 or 40% of his space has been taken over by bandits, you would think that you would rather have a governor who will be on the ground trying to control things rather than combine running the APC as a party, in addition to his state that is at a critical point, you know.
Now, do you think that this probably have some kind of connection with the National Convention as to the preparation and the previous postponements that we've seen? This looks also like there's some kind of delay or some kind of dragging of foot, you know, by the Buni-led, you know, committee. And so maybe there are some others who are saying, look, let's just have this convention and get it done with. So maybe Buni is being is being the one dragging the whole thing.
You know, it's easy to simply because Buni is the head to just conclude that what is happening is merely about Buni. Political calculations suggest that Buni has been doing the bidding of some people all along, right? Some governors have been behind him. Even some presidential sources seem to also be behind Buni. So I think it is outrightly wrong to assume that Buni has some cards off his sleeves and it is basically just about Buni. It's about a number of party interests. Even the people fighting him are doing so because they have a different interest from what he has. At any rate, even if Buni canvasses for a postponement now, INEC has a calendar that suggests that by June, all of these processes should have taken place. So at any rate, even if you are deferring from March, you have probably just April and May. And I think the political calculations largely is that the closer it gets to the convention, maybe the easier it will be for them, largely because people that will lose out of a convention, has always been the case, will usually be thinking of how to jump into an alternative boat. And because they have an alternative boat ready to sail, they don't care most times. They just want to rock the current boat. If it will not favor me, let's just rock it, because they think they have something on the, waiting on the pipeline. So the thinking largely is, if we keep this close to the INEC date, it then means once we go through this process and winners and losers emerge, they will be forced to remain and work for the success of those ones who emerge rather than move into an alternative arrangement or jump ship, as the case may be, and sail to their own El Dorado. So that is the political calculation on the one side, which is not exactly wrong, but people who think the machination currently doesn't favor them want this resolved as early as possible so that their political aspiration, is not brought to a halt, is not brought, does not attain a ceiling simply because they lose out of this political calculation. So basically what we are seeing is different kind of forces, trying to take hold of the party instrumentalities and direct it in a manner that will favor their own political calculation. And there are quite a number of them. Even the issue of the national chairman has not been fully, the endorsement has not been fully ratified. It appears the president has given his blessing to one person, but the other parties are still seriously pushing to see if the president can reconsider his position. So there are quite a number of calculations going on.
Okay. Now let's take a look at some more stories still on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. We're seeing that the court, has stopped President Muhammadu Buhari and others clamoring for the amendments to the new Electoral Act. And also the National Assembly may also halt, amendments to that. Could you comment on that?
That was a very interesting piece of information that came in from yesterday. Because if you recall, the president signed the amended copy, if you like.
Double amendment.
Yes, largely on the premise that the National Assembly will return and amend a provision, that said those serving political appointees will have to vacate office at least 6 months before an election, which is something they didn't really like. They feel 6 months is rather too early. They wanted an amendment to it, or even they wanted it expunged, actually. And some people are saying rather than expunging it, amend it, because there is a valid argument in it. People sit in a current position, use money from their office, to prosecute campaign, putting their contenders at disadvantage, basically using government money to show up at campaign venues, getting attention largely because you occupy a current office and using that as a mileage over and above other contenders in the race. So the idea is, if you're interested in an office, then relinquish your current office and all the benefits therein and throw yourself in the ring, and create a level playing ground between you and the other. And that's the right way to test your popularity rather than use the instrumentality of your office to drive that process. So that's a germane argument. How long that should happen, 3 months, 6 months, is what we don't know. People who are conversing for 6 months are saying 6 months, yes, so that you start all that process ahead of the primaries before you become before you become a candidate. Some are saying 3 months so that the person can continue to function in the office since that was given to him in trust by an appointee. So these are the arguments. Now the opposition had gone to court to say, stop the National Assembly from considering an amendment. And that had thrown all that process into because they are racing against time.
But I mean, to what extent can that, order hold? Really?
Yeah, the House Minority Leader was saying...
Can the court really make that kind of order?
The House Minority Leader was saying the court cannot stop the National Assembly process, but that is not exactly correct. Just as the National Assembly also tried to stop certain executive actions. That is why we have checks and balances. But if they are acting within the purview of their parliamentary responsibility, yes, a court order cannot necessarily stop them, except if what they are doing impinges, on the provisions of the Constitution. I think that is where the courts come in to say you have overstepped, basically, your ban. It will be interesting how this whole scenarios unfold, because even if a law is made, as we have seen in the past today, and there is the need to make amendment tomorrow, I think they can always find ways to do that. That is why they are there as National Assembly, to listen to each other, because if they fail to do this, tomorrow it will be difficult to convince the president to act in a particular way in expectation that they will reciprocate. So it's the argument is still unfolding. Let us see how they are going to resolve this.
All right. Well, we have quite a number of litigations really ongoing. Igboho in Benin Republic, free but not free. Yeah. The court has released him, but he cannot leave Benin Republic. So I'm wondering, what that means. And then you have the Abba Kyari story also, who is pleading not to be sent to jail just yet. Maybe he should just remain in the custody of the NDLEA and all of that. I mean, it looks like a reversal from his initial standpoint. He's pleading not guilty and he doesn't want to go to jail at the same time.
I think it is logical for him. If he pleads not guilty and he has not been found guilty, why send him to jail? I think that's what the argument is. Because, come on, it's the same jail where he has sent a lot of people to. I mean, showing up in that place with the people who have become lords and masters in the jail, you can imagine the kind of fates that await him. But it's interesting because in the same first swoop, other team members of his pleaded guilty. Maybe there was a way they were involved that he wasn't, in order not to preempt a contempt of court. It will be interesting to see how this unfolds. But you know, some of the things that came out very interesting for me from that court case was how comported he was. You know, he was bold, he was confident, he was looking straight in the eye of the judges. And then there was this beautiful woman by his side that I don't quite understand. Sister,
Two of
wife,
them actually.
Two of them actually.
Yeah.
My guess is probably these are his wives or maybe.
You know, I'm not sure what that is, wives, sisters, but you know, it tells you how dramatic this country is.
It looks like we try to bring in emotions and sentiments whenever issues like this come up. People try to demonstrate, you know, because of course the attention of the media is there. So you see all eyes are on this person, and then they try to be dramatic in some way.
Yeah, don't you think it is fair that if they have enjoyed the largesse that they should go to the court with him?
Well, it's just, it's just moral.
They had the good times together. Now, if he's standing trial, it's only fair that they show solidarity. Nobody knows how this is going to go in the long run. You know,
that's loyalty, actually.
Indeed, because we saw the case of Hanifa, you know, and then the wife is saying, I cannot wait for him to be in jail for that long. You just let her go.
You know. So that's all those were interesting scenarios.
But you know, I'm just wondering, in the case of Hanifa, Abubakar's the wife to the man in question, is she now being disloyal for, you know, not standing by him in the midst of this? Or how do you describe it? Maybe I threw it to
you. His own was horrific. I mean, he pleaded guilty. Maybe because he is still pleading not guilty, it gives the wife some level of confidence to continue to. It felt like walking on the runway rather than coming out of the courtroom yesterday. And they were gorgeously dressed. Okay. You know, so you can mistake that walk from anything other than the court. Sure. For instance, I mean, what we see in his case is similar to what we are seeing with Sowore. You know, just ring fencing him around Benin Republic to ensure that he doesn't live there while all of the other trial processes you know, go through.
All right. Well, I want us to also look at this very interesting story. Interesting and sad at the same time. The story about the slain lady on the Lagos BRT yesterday. Quite sad story. I saw how, you know, her parents, her mom in particular, you know, was in that mourning mode yesterday. And it's quite sad, you know, when you see some of those things. Now, the revelations that are coming out from there, the BRT driver in question says that he do not know the people in that BRT bus, you know, that forced the lady out of the vehicle and killed her. But again, there was some communication between the lady and a friend of hers while she was on that bus, calling for help and asking that she should pray for her. It's like she suspected something was going on because the moment she was picked from where she was picked from, the bus was said to have not, it was reported that he didn't pick anyone else, you know, from that point on and until they continued to move. And when she was beginning to sense that there's danger, she decided she wanted to, you know, drop, you know, from the vehicle as advised by her friend whom she was in communication with. So, and now, when you hear the drivers, you know, trying to say, well, he was afraid, which is why he ran away when she was pulled out of the vehicle by, you know, the should I call them kidnappers now or what? I don't know, you know. So it's really quite sad, the accounts that we're hearing, isn't it?
It is. what resonates with me when I went through that story was basically the one chance experience here in the city of Abuja or other places as we have come to know. But the one chance experience are usually successful because it's a smaller vehicle of just one or two persons, you know, where you walk into and then you are wheeled. To think that a bus with the capacity of over 50 passengers can be used to coordinate this premeditated murder in a city like Lagos, where per second on the bus corridor you are driving through thousands of people, and at every bus stop you have agents of these buses who are supposed to process passengers into the buses as it continues to the next destination. Watch a bus move all that distance empty with a few persons without stopping it to add more people, or watch some persons disembark, you know, until this whole thing was executed, you know, sends chilling fevers into me, because it then begins to appear that this was a well-orchestrated, well-organized crime. The driver cannot feign ignorance, because I am sure for a company like that, if you sense danger, but supposing they were not for the lady, supposing they had come for his life, was there no way he could call attention? An alarm. Supposing he drove into a mob, as we saw during the NSAS period, when they drove into a waiting mob that destroyed one or two, was there nothing he would have done? After he jumped out of the vehicle, was there nothing he possibly could have done to draw public attention? You know, so let us concede to him that he was afraid. But even in his actions and reaction, without prejudice to his being tried, appears like an involuntary cooperation. You know, on the one hand, you are afraid, but your action has then contributed to somebody losing his life because you have failed to act responsibly or even draw some kind of public attention to what has happened. This issue needs to be thoroughly investigated. The accounts that are coming out are illogical. They don't appeal to reason. They do not explain why that kind of crime should happen in a city center bustling with human beings as much as Lagos.
And it was quite surprising, you know, to really get to know that the BRT, as it is, uses, you know, a third party to hire drivers, you know, for the BRT, you know, operations, really. So it's not like Lagos State government is doing the hiring directly by itself. It uses, you know, a certain company to do the hiring. So now that brings to question, you know, how the process, you know, of recruiting these drivers. How
you
does
know,
it
if the Lagos State government has deferred to a third party, they may have done so professionally, especially if the third party has expertise in providing drivers. There are so many outsourcing companies in Lagos, some, you know, providing all kinds of services. And so if something is not within your ranks and you are not trying to bring them into the civil service with a civil service salary structure and all of that, you can as well outsource it to a firm that has some kind of arrangement that removes all of that headache, you know, from you. The banks do it. You know, quite a number of organizations do it. C&L company is a leasing company for those kind of things. They have buses and the rest that serves all kind of things. Chartered, they also do it. So remember that even the BRT operation is not handled straight by the state government. The whole idea is to bring about efficiency and all of that. So if they are giving this out, it's fine. But I'm not sure that the third party, the outsourced company, would have taken in these drivers without adequate biometrics information, or even what they call surety, you know, providing sureties that will stand for you to say, should you damage anything or disappear on account of this, we will hold you responsible. So I'm sure all of those processes may have been there. But no matter how tight these processes are, you know, it's not very easy to preclude, for those systems to still capture people who are criminal minded, one or two. What the system should do is to put sufficient check in place. As we have with BRT in London, they have cameras. So once in a while, just like you have street cameras looking at what's happening, they could peep into those buses to see what's going on. So some of them are not live cameras. Some are cameras within the buses that record proceedings that can be reviewed. I hope that our BRT buses also have these inbuilt cameras that we can go back and look at, the sequence of events and begin to say this is exactly what happened, so that we can even put a face to these people. We can put, we can begin to understand what exactly happened, how it went on, and from that place design safety measures, to prevent reoccurrence in the future.
Okay.
All right.
Now let's quickly go on a quick break. When we come back, Sunday Michael will still be with us. Stay. All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you live from the nation's capital city. We're still discussing the headlines on our papers this morning, and Sunday Michael, the Deputy Business Editor, is still here with us in the studio. Now, there's a story on the Daily Trust newspaper. Yesterday, we saw 5 die, while digging sand to build groom's house. That is quite tragic.
Yes. It is tragic, painfully. People who had gone out to undertake sort of a charity, in solidarity with one of their own, ending up in a fatal accident as what has happened is tragic. And I wonder how the groom would be feeling.
Honestly, I mean, he may have to live with that for
for the rest of
life.
his life. You know, his own decision to probably get a house and settle down, you know, has cost him not one, not two, not three of his friend. That is really, really sad. It's a pathetic story. You begin to wonder when things happen like this, what can you do to the family of these five to, you know, to show to serve as some kind, that is, if at all, some kind of compensation. So this is really, really sad. But again, for me, every situation provides an opportunity for learning. We need to understand the circumstances and the safety measures around this kind of thing so that it doesn't continue to happen. It's like the landmines, you know, like what we used to say in Jos those days when they were digging for tin and all of that, where people go into very dangerous points, and once there is a slide, it covers them up, and if there is no rescue immediately and it saps out the oxygen within the hole, then it becomes fatal. But it's indeed a very sad development.
Well, I mean, that also talks about, you know, the crude ways in which, you know, people still operate with respect to that.
Yeah.
I mean, the society has evolved, you know, in some way.
Yeah, evolution also comes with a price. I mean, they understand that there are alternatives to what they do, probably approach a block industry and buy blocks. The question would then be, do they have the means? Can they afford it? You know, affordability then becomes an issue. So even if you promulgate a law today banning these things, and whatever is available as an alternative is outside the reach of these people, they will continue to, you know, to go after those things that they feel are within their reach. So what would then be important for us is to evolve a safer way of doing these things so that they do not, going forward, people do not endanger their life, you know, trying to mine blocks from the sun.
That President Muhammadu Buhari has approved houses for 1994 Super Eagles players.
1994, 2004, 2014, that's some 26 years.
26 years ago.
26 years after. Well, as they say, better late than never. But as a country, you know, we must be deliberate about how we want younger generations to perceive, you know, what we do today. And the way we treat people of yesterday, you know, would determine whether people will be willing to make sacrifices for this country. I mean, if you recall, one of the members of that team was recently seen running, driving bus between Enugu and Nsukka for a living, you know, because according to him, he said he cannot go begging. And yet you had this kind of promise waiting in the woods for 26 years when it could have come earlier, you know, to support the life of these persons, because they are not civil servants. A playing career is so short. If you are lucky, you can be in the limelight for 10 years. Some others come in within 5 years, they are done. And whatever they earn within that 5 years become what they have to survive with over the period of their lives. And so it is important that if they attain any glory and you had publicly made a promise, nobody forced you to, and it was within your capacity as a government to deliver on those promises, that we keep to those promises so that people coming after them, you know, would say this country is one that is really worth dying for, and that if you do anything to bring glory to motherland would not forget you, you know. In places like England, once you have played for the national team, you are on a life pension for the rest of your life. You know, you are taken care of. Here, we don't have that arrangement. So if people have attained glory and we have made promises, I think it is important that as a country, we do all within our power to meet them.
All right. Now, before we go, I would like for us to, you know, to have a glance at, you know, the Daily Trust special edition for women. That is talking about the International Women's Day. Quite some interesting, you know, pieces here. Yeah. I see a story about one, Amina Ibrahim, Kano's female tricyclist, changing narratives. I mean, when we talk about breaking the bias, Zainab, I mean, here we are, a woman in a state like Kano, you know, engaging in a job, you know, that is mainly male-dominated, you know, riding tricycle. I don't think I've seen any woman doing that anywhere here in Abuja or anywhere, as a matter of fact.
Really very interesting. And coming from Kano State is really remarkable. You know, I remember the time that a correspondent back in Kano did a story about her. I also saw her, I think yesterday, on the BBC. And it's really important, you know, to shed the light on women like this, you know, doing extraordinary things, to support their families. I think these days, women have gone beyond just being housewives and just being mothers, to doing extraordinary things, to, you know, breaking the glass ceiling, to do something really relevant for humanity. And it's really very important we talk about it.
Yeah, I agree completely with you. I also stumbled on her story. What was amazing for me was she wasn't exactly a young woman. She's in her mid 40s or maybe early 50s. And the excitement with which she does it. In fact, her story was even more fascinating, to think that nobody taught her how to ride a tricycle. You know, she said she basically wanted to go see a family member and the husband wasn't willing to drive her out. She just jumped into it, started the thing and drove safely. Before the husband would come out to say, what has happened to you? She had basically gone and returned. You know, so it tells you that with the right kind of environment and willingness, women will be willing to break these barriers. But we've seen quite a number of them in the South. I've seen women drive the BRT buses. I've seen quite a number of them ride the tricycle in Lagos. I think the trend is now going full cycle.
Yeah, even in Abuja, I think I've seen a couple of taxi drivers.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? Give it to them, Zainab. When you get into a BRT driven by a woman, they are more careful. They approach the bumps carefully. They take into account that there could be pregnant women in the buses. Right. But when you get these guys driving it, it feels like a bus is on the tarmac waiting to take off like the planes, you know. They see a bump within 100 meters. Their leg is still on the throttle until they get within yards of the bumps before they start applying brakes. So everybody swings in the bus upward, and then you know, the force then forces you back on the brake forces you back on your seat and all of that. So give it to them. They're a bit more careful. But I wish, this is the man talking in me now, that we get to a point where the men really wake up to their responsibility and limit the kind of things that women have to do. It's enough that you have to take care of a family. It's enough that you have to be pregnant. It's enough that you have to cater for family. I think any kind of work that they will be doing in addition to what appears like a nature-giving responsibility should be one that would not take so much after them. I mean, if a woman has to do that and she has to contend with childbearing and she has to contend with domestic work, that would amount to me like an over labor sort of.
Now, really nice getting to hear that from you someday, coming from a man.
Well, you know, I'm just concerned, you know, part of the things failing some of the ideas, you know, there are certain sometimes cultural / religious beliefs, you know, that seem to limit the way women, you know, engage in certain, you know, activities or certain endeavors and the likes of them. So, I mean, how do we strike a balance between some of these, you know, orientations, you know, and then, of course, the need for women to also participate in nation building in their own, you know, in their own way?
There's absolutely the need for women to participate in nation building. They bring a different kind of skills that even if we try, for the remaining part of this world, we may not be able to augment. You know, they come with a different spirit, a different demeanor, and they balance things out differently in a way that we can't even begin to understand. Their capacity to endure stress, to absorb pain is unimaginable. You know, maybe because of their genetic frame and build-up. What we need to do as a society is to begin to decriminalize the way we treat women. I mean, we hear of the Nigerian police force where a woman cannot get pregnant. You go to corporate organization and they say for the first 3 years of your getting married or something, you cannot take in. We cannot criminalize childbearing. If not, we will be preventing the procreation of future labor force. If they don't give birth today, how do you raise the first class students of tomorrow who would then continue to serve in those companies to perpetuate them and create the jobs that you need? So we can't criminalize it. What we can do is to evolve our system such that it provides for what they are supposed to do, because they provide a very fantastic, how do I call it? They function in a way that sort of keeps society going. You know how you feel when you come back from a day walk, all tired, all exhausted. The only thing you want when you get back home is probably a good meal, some good warm water to bathe, and a well-made bed, and you are off. You don't even care whether the house was probably kept. You don't care what the kids are saying. You are not looking at any homework books and all of that. This woman goes to the same work as you, and while at work, she's mindful of the assignments that needs to be cross-checked. She's mindful of that kind of food you are supposed to take. She's mindful of how the home will be kept. And so she rushes in, rather than get a rest like you and go to bed, she's trying to fix those. And so if you get an 8-hour sleep, she probably gets 5 and wakes up early to make sure that you get something before you leave the house early, and she also has to be at an office at a given time. So,
let me, I want Zainab to respond to this, really. This story about this, Amina Ibrahim, I'm just imagining what she must have gone through in a place like Kano, where you have a lot of men dominating what she does. The kind of things that they may have said to her, being a woman, the perception that they are going to be having about her, maybe looking at her as this deviant woman, or maybe maybe someone who is insubordinate or disrespectful and the likes. I'm just imagining the kind of perception, that she is going to be confronted with.
It's really tragic that, particularly from the north, you get to see that a lot coming from the north. When a woman has dreams, when she wants to do something, they tell you, no, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that. But we have the capacity to actually do that. We have multitasking skills to actually even do more. I think what women need is supportive husbands who could actually be there for their wives, to soar, to fly higher and do great things in the world. And I think recently that has begun to change in the north, particularly in Kano and other neighboring states. Women are beginning to stand up. Women are beginning to do bigger things. I've seen women in tech come up from states like that. I've seen women, doing extraordinary things all over the world. And it's really important we talk about this and support them in achieving their dreams.
And talking about husbands, I'm sure I'm sure the role of husbands and men generally is very critical in changing some of this narrative.
Very important.
How do we even get men to begin to think and understand that, look, the role of a woman is just beyond the other room, like we heard even our leader one time.
It's important that as a society we even allow women elevate their play. That way the men who work in those places with those women will see that it is possible beyond just being at home. I will give you an instance. I covered banking for a long time. One of the bank that is headed by a woman came up with the idea of designing crèches paid for. The crèche workers are bank staffs, nurses, and midwives. And they created a whole floor with all kinds of toys for children 6 months and 4 or 5, thereabout. They have teachers, and people helping them to speech therapy and everything. Just like every other bank worker who shows up but does nothing other than go to the crèche session of that bank and help women who are nursing mothers, who are lactating mothers, bring in their baby, take them from them, put them in a clean, conducive, comfortable environment, cater for them, make foods for them, tender to those children, and allow the woman attend to a banking role. And within the banking role, they design a framework that allows her every hour on the hour, like we take our news, to excuse herself, go and meet her baby and breastfeed for a number of time and return. And you are sure that this child is well taken care of, is within your reach. Should anything be happening, there is a midwife, there is a doctor paid for by the bank. It had to take a woman who understands the need of a woman to begin to evolve organizational strategy to accommodate this kind of strategy. And every well-meaning organization today should be thinking like that, and that is how we'll continue to accommodate them and make it conducive for women to play within our systems and design. If you don't have a woman in a board, there is no how the policies of that organization would be women-friendly. Right. Because nobody in that place thinks like a woman and understands what a woman needs to provide for those kind of things. It was women in the board that started compelling HMOs to include certain vital operations as part of HMO offerings because they cater to the need of a woman. And so we need them more, to begin to evolve our boardroom strategy to become even more accommodative. That way, I mean, if you want your daughter to achieve the highest of height, what stops you from allowing your wife to aspire to the same thing?
I mean, so when we say that, I mean, seeing women in places of decision making, like you referred to in the board, for instance, the recent instance, that we saw, the rejection of the gender bills in the National Assembly, rings a bell, that maybe we are a society that is not ready, for this.
Maybe at the National Assembly level, but I think rather than allow that deter us, we can begin to evolve this process gradually. I don't think, in my own person, I think these things can evolve even without a law, because even if you make these things laws and people are not disposed to implementing them, they just remain in the books, But as a culture, we can begin to make deliberate efforts to evolve, to consciously move towards these things and allow for a sizable proportion of what we do, whether as appointive position or as elective position, to have these women come in and bring their own divergent perspective. You know how sometimes as a man you think you have given it the best thought, that you have all angles covered, and then you open your idea to your wife and she goes to one corner and brings out something that you had never given the slightest thought, and begin to show you how that new perspective or dimension can alter everything that you have spent days, months thinking about. That's what they bring, and until we understand these things, it will be difficult for us to then make allowances for them. We have to move fast. I mean, see other nations where women have elevated responsibility. Today, nobody guarantees that as a man or as a head of the family, you are always going to have the opportunity to provide for the family. So what's wrong if the woman is empowered to a level where, should things go bad for you, she can be there to support, and provide some kind of cushioning for the periods when things go bad? I mean, what about in the case of when the ultimate happens, when you pass on? Imagine passing on and leaving a wife with 3 or 4 children who is not empowered, who is not skilled, who has no capacity to do anything, and you have family members who are already tiring from their own family responsibility. What becomes the future of your children? If your wife is not in the position to make some of those critical decisions that are important for your family, your children to continue, schooling and attain some of the laudable dreams you had whilst you were alive. So these are the things you think about. Your wife is not somebody for the other room. She is an alternative driver. It's important you understand that, and that sometimes you would not always have the strength to drive the car. It's important there is another person who can help you move from point A to B. At the end of the day, what is important is the family objective is met with support from every member of the family.
Well, really interesting.
Quite interesting, really. I mean, I think that every woman of influence should pick a copy of the Daily Trust newspaper, because quite a lot of deliberate efforts here to spotlight certain women. From pages 27 all the way to page 46 is all about women. And if you take look at page 35, for instance, pick someone like the Director General of the National Pension Commission, Aisha Dahir Umar, doing a spotlight on her and some of the achievements under her watch in the National Pension Commission is something very interesting. Stories like how women can combine career and marriage, special features there. I think you want to pick a copy of the Daily Trust
Even for
newspaper.
a man, it's a delight. I mean,
I think men need to see that. Men need to read that as well.
All right. Well, with that, I think we've come to the end of the dailies on Daybreak today. We'll be taking a short break. Thank you so much, Sunday Michael, for joining us on this session.
It's my pleasure.
And having perspectives on the stories.
Thank you.
All right. Please stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
I am a woman.
I need a voice.
A voice to change the world.
Making it a better place. Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
To secure the future, stand up.
As we celebrate this year's International Women's Day,
We demand gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19,
Is an infectious disease
caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19 or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others at least 2 meters even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority.
This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
right, thank you for staying here watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. As we are all aware, today is International Women's Day, and this is our focus partly on Daybreak today. And then we have in the studio now the Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. She is Faith Nwadishi, and she'll be talking to us about this International Women's Day. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning. Happy Women's Day to the women out there.
Same to you. Now, the last time you were on the program, we were talking about the gender bills, in the National Assembly. And, we saw the report. Eventually, it didn't pull through. What's your reaction to that?
One, I was heartbroken. Two, I was disappointed, and to note that in the 21st century where we find ourselves, we still have issues that were raised even in the early 1900s about women's participation in politics, in governance, and then there's this opportunity for us to change that, and we didn't change that. Come to think about the issue about citizenship, for instance. If I, as a Nigerian woman, I am married to a foreigner, my foreigner husband cannot claim citizenship of the country, but my male counterpart can give citizenship to his wife. But while in other climes, as a woman, as a bona fide citizen of your country, if you're married, your spouse can actually claim citizenship of your country. And now we have all of these religious injunctions that says, once a man and a woman has been joined together, don't divide them, and we have laws that are trying to separate women. That's at the basic part of it. And then the other part about a woman having been married to her husband cannot claim indigenship of that particular state, even after 5 years, 10 years. We have seen cases where women were given national appointments because she's not from that particular state. She is from the state, that state is her husband's state. And the people will protest that it's not her seat. It shouldn't be given to her because she's not from that state. And we have this opportunity to correct that. And the National Assembly, that is a representative of the people, says, no, we cannot push forward that at this moment. So it's really heartbreaking. There were just about 5 provisions, gender provisions in the constitutional review that we're supposed to have gotten, and we didn't get anyone. It's quite heartbroken. It shows that even though women contribute a lot, and which is why we are celebrating International Women's Day, looking at the contribution of women to national development and all of that, so we still don't see that it's important to have women at the center, discussing and having equal access to information and decision making at the same time.
Okay. On this year's Women's International Day, how important is it to actually talk about women's roles in nation building?
It's very important because right from creation itself, we keep saying that without women there wouldn't have been population, there wouldn't have been development. It has been so designed that women have to incubate every part of the human body. For instance, the woman has to get pregnant, incubate the baby for 9 months before the baby is born. That's the specific role of the woman in, first and foremost, getting the people who will make the decisions for the nation to grow. So when we look at the foundation of it all, the woman plays a very important role. But when it comes to the everyday administration of that foundation, or the structure that has now been put on that foundation, we say that women shouldn't play a role. So women play that role from the beginning and needs to be integrated into playing the other role of nation building. For instance, when you talk about decision making, if you want to take a decision about health care, for instance, you would want to put a woman there because she understands what it takes for her, the period of getting pregnant, even before getting pregnant, nurturing that pregnancy, birthing that pregnancy, and nurturing the child until when the child becomes a teenager and becomes an adult. In the Nigerian Constitution, a child is defined as somebody who is 0 to 18 years. So between that 0 to 18 years, the woman has to take care, helping to mold the psyche of the child, making sure that child becomes a responsible person. And when it comes to when the child has grown to be part of that, you say the woman cannot be a part of that. So, and that's why it's really important that right from the early 1900s, when women started agitating that women's voices should be heard, women's rights should be respected, incrementally we are seeing that women can play such important roles. We have seen that even women can be heads of government, and in being heads of government, they have been able to pilot their countries to full development and keeping them in such ways that in the past we thought that women couldn't be governors, women couldn't be senators, women couldn't even be at the highest rank of authority. Okay. But they have been there and they have shown that they have the capacity to deliver and have contributed enormously to both national development and global development.
Okay. All right. Now, we will be taking a short clip from the Honorable Federal Commissioner for the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, Mrs. Iman Suleiman, in an exclusive interview with Thrust TV on the same subject. Before we come back, please stay.
Yes, breaking the bias, that's a very relevant theme. And when you link it with the recent happenings from the National Assembly, you can see that, yes, we're set to break the bias, because when you mean business, usually there's some kind of, you kind of encounter some kind of obstacles, and that's what we can see happen. So it means that we're on the right track. We have to keep pushing, keep trying. We don't need any legislature to be able to achieve what is meant to happen. I feel that it's non-negotiable. We're going to find that balance. We just have to keep pushing, coordinate ourselves, amplify our voices, speak with one strong voice as women. But I think we're on the right track, and it's exciting times. So what happened, we shouldn't just see it as a negative, but we should see it as a positive, that we're making progress. That it even made it to that bill to be a matter of consideration. Democracy is, is a fair level playing ground for everyone. I don't think that you should be given any consideration because of any gender sensitivity. I know that we're trying to close up the gap to break that bias, but if we don't have the cooperation from all genders, then it's not going to happen. But we can still make it happen regardless of that. That's what I want women to understand. Because when you see yourself as a victim, or you're waiting for people to make things happen to you, it slows you down. So we should recognize that we have the numbers, we have the resolve, we have the desire, so we have to make it happen for us. It's happened for many people in other countries. It can happen for us too. Main importance is that having that balanced approach to problem solving, having that balanced approach to providing solutions, because men and women think differently. When you have a balance, then you can be able to have different angles of solving national problems. And there's no how that you create a table and there's no seat for every single person. If you look at how we even coordinate and discharge our responsibilities as agencies, we collaborate because everybody has a role to play. And it's the same with even building the nation or with governance. Everybody should have a voice. Not just women or men, but we should also have representation from every stakeholder in the society, so that we can be able to address other people's concerns, so that we can be able to move in the right direction, not leaving no one behind.
All right, there you have it. And that was the Honorable Federal Commissioner for the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, Mrs. Iman Suleiman. Now, talking about the role of men in changing some of these narratives, I mean, we can talk, we can advocate, we can say a lot, but we have, the National Assembly, the lawmaking body of the country, dominated by men. And it shows that it's very important, to change certain stereotypes that some men hold on to as to why they do not see need to give room for more women to participate in governance and the rest of them. How can we change these narratives, that some stereotypes that we see, sometimes cultural, sometimes religious, in breaking this bias?
Thank you so much. The truth of the matter is that some of these stereotypes come from our background and from our culture. It also stems from the fact that for a very long time, women have been seen to be the weaker sex. But I keep saying that when you say a woman is a weaker sex, does not mean that she doesn't have the capacity to take on the hard things in society. The fact that a woman was created to be a helpmate to a man means that a woman is created of a more superior material. That's that's my argument from my point of view, from being a civil engineer. Because if you have a defect in a building or in any structure and you want to work on that structure, what you do is that you look for a material of a higher tensile strength to be able to bear that other defective structure. If you take a structure or a material that is of a lower tensile strength to support that structure, the original structure will collapse and destroy the help that it's getting. And so that's the way I want us to think about it. If we have men thinking about it that way, to say this is a support for what you're doing, bringing all of that, sitting on the table, we won't have all of these issues. So for me, the strategy is let's start training our boy child to understand that there is a space for everybody on the table, depending on the capacities that you have and the information that you have, to make it a collective, to make it a whole. Because if you continue to sit down and make laws for everybody in the society, leaving out certain persons in the society, implementation becomes a problem. Implementation is a problem because you have not considered my own perspective, my own idea of having that. Now let's take even the commonest aspect of maternity leaves that we give to pregnant women. There was a time men started even asking for paternity leave.
I mean, they deserve it.
Now they're asking for paternity leave.
I mean, some men, men do deserve this paternity leave, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the process of childbearing, is the hardship and the difficulty is not just on the woman,
Okay, so you understand now why women need to have equal seat at the table to be able to make those decisions. You understand it? Because they say that he or she who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. There are certain aspects of society that we really know what it is about. And because of the fact that we have also incubated the other part of the human race, the male gender, it also means that we understand a little bit of what goes on there. So in breaking that, it's really not about who is more superior, who is stronger, because you hear people say, oh, the women want to come and take over. There is not a single case study of where you have given a woman the opportunity to lead that she takes over. What she does is she makes it all inclusive, and that's why the popular slogan that says, train a woman, you train the nation. So it's about women have this natural capacity of inclusivity. So this whole conversation about inclusion and all of that, when you put women on the table, it becomes easier to even implement. So that's the strategy I think the members of the National Assembly and all lawmakers and every man indeed should be able to see, that we need to start changing the orientation from the home as the children are growing, give them equal opportunities, let the boy child learn how to cook, let the girl child learn how to play football, and also and do so many other things that we thought were ordinarily not possible for men and women to do. So when we begin to have that kind of understanding, we won't see it anymore as a challenge to have women in decision-making positions.
Okay. Now the theme for this year's International Women's Day is break the bias. How can women, in their own way stand together in order to break, all of these stereotypes that we see?
Thank you very much. This year, I think in the wisdom of the United Nations and the way they bring the themes for the year, last year it was Stand to Challenge. Then today is Break the Bias. And I begin to see the wisdom around all of that. So before you are able to break something, you need to be able to stand to challenge it. So in challenging it, you understand what the issues are so that you can really challenge. And in challenging, you bring solutions so that where you don't find solutions, where there are other areas that you need to just break it. So as women, what we need to do is stand together. We need to stand together to challenge it and be able to garner our strength together to be able to break those biases. But we cannot break it ourselves. We need to be able to get the other gender to understand, we have male and female, to understand that in breaking these biases, we're not just breaking it because we want to make a way for women. We want to make a way for the nation to develop. We want to make a way for the world to develop in a sustainable manner, so that there's no gap. You're not creating any gap. Where you have a deficit in understanding what is it that the woman can do or what is it that the man can do, you have people already who would help to fill that gap. And you just move on. And that's why the theme actually is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. So if you're able to break the bias, for instance, if we really understand why the National Assembly voted against those 5 provisions in the Constitution, it will really help us to begin to even make progress. And so every woman needs to come out, educate the man beside her, educate her her male children, educate the family on understanding why, from the family perspective, we need to have more women included, and then we can now translate that into the nation and worldwide.
All right. Now, let's talk about the role of educational institutions, schools, from primary, secondary, up to tertiary institutions. What are some of the deliberate steps that we must take to change, this bias, to change the stereotypes?
The first thing we need to do, like I said earlier, is also to change it from the homes. The homes are the ones that send the children to the schools. We need to change our curriculum and language to make it friendly, so that you're not saying, the kind of roles that you give to children in the class to play. If you decide to give decision-making roles to the boy child in the class, and you are giving other followership role to the girl child in the class, already you are building that child to know that, I can never be a decision maker as a female, but as a male, you are the one that should be taking all of those decisions. So we should do a change of role and narratives, and be able to also give different assignments to children in the school. And then change, for instance, a child is having his or her birthday in school, and you are painting everywhere pink. And I remember my son came back from school one day. There was a t-shirt I bought for him, a pink t-shirt. I said, no, this t-shirt is a female t-shirt. He cannot wear it because female. I said, who says that pink is female? And he said, no, that he wear a blue one. It took me time he's just 8. And imagine at 7, he was saying that, imagine the kind of orientation he would get growing up. But now he begins to understand that even though I'm a male, I can put on a pink shirt, I can put on whatever color of shirt. It doesn't make me less a male, it doesn't make me less a female, So those things we need to do within our educational system and to protect. We need to also raise children to understand that the protection of the rights of others is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to, when you talk about, I'm always talking about protecting my rights, I need my rights. It is also my responsibility to know what the right of the other person is. So we need to put all of those into the school curriculum and teach children these things, so that when they grow up, it doesn't become so hard for them to do. In the past, even at the cultural, in our cultural settings, it's difficult before you see women who are chiefs, but now you are seeing women who are chiefs, and they are doing very well. They're bringing development to society. When you have a man who doesn't have a male child, has all female children, community will discriminate against him and all of that. It's changing now. A lot of people are saying now that train the women, and they're the ones who are coming home to bring the development.
All right. Well, quite a lot of angles to this, really. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the role of the media, entertainment, and films and all of that, in changing some of these stereotypes. Please stay with us.
Taking its tolls on the residents of the state, the fuel scarcity is as a result of most of the filling stations close down their services for lack of supply or due to deliberate hoardings of the petroleum product, while residents of the state are feeling the brunt of the actions of some of the fuel dealers. In trying to buy the fuel, some commuters have to pass a night on the queue, while others, who came to the stations early in the morning, made effort to have their way into the filling station through any of the available entries. Even in the few filling stations selling the product, it is long queue of vehicles that are taking hours before either getting the product at a price above government-approved amount, and some spend hours without getting the product, ending up leaving the stations unhappy. This woman, who initially told Trust TV off camera that she was traveling to a far distance and has been on the queue for several hours but yet to get the product, said the time she wasted on the queue waiting has affected her business plan trip. The woman, when asked to be recorded, said because of the condition she found herself, she wouldn't want to be recorded talking, but call on government to take measures that will bring an end to the scarcity. In some of the stations where the product are sold, people were seen struggling to get the product either in their jerrycans or vehicles. For those who could not afford to bear the suffering of getting the fuel in filling stations, find their ways to black marketers, whom also their numbers reduces on the streets. These people are among those Trust TV camera captured trying to get the fuel in the black market.
The thing is not easy with us because of the fuel scarcity and also the price. The price is too high. It's not easy for many of us now to afford to buy fuel. Almost all the fuel station is locked, and that's not how we will get the fuel. If not because, if not all these black marketers that normally help. And like even where I bought now, others are selling even 500, but the place I am now, they are selling their own 350. I'm appealing to government to help the masses. At least let them talk, so that the price will come down. So the masses will enjoy the benefit of everything. We are suffering and it's not good.
Gwamnati zai ta duba. Ita ne shugaban jama'a. Kowa a karkashin ta take. Saboda haka gwamnati ta yi kokari ta tabbatar da cewa an samu sauki a maganar mai so da rayuwar dan adam yayi kyau. Baka ba ana cikin hatsari. Akwai yunwa sannan ga wahalan mai kuma nan so da yawa shike ja wahalan abinci da sauransu.
One of the black marketers also spoke.
Ina bada kuɗi ne ana bani. Ina sayo a 300. A 300 din ma suna sake samuna wani abu a cikin jarakunan. Su ce sai mun biya su kamar wai da suna saka man a cikin famfo. Ina sayar a 350.
Attempt to hear from any of the fuel stations managers were not successful. Even one of them, who initially agreed to speak with Trust TV crew, later declined for a reason best known to him. Investigations revealed that the product, if found, prices per liter are ranges from 270 naira to 300 naira in filling stations and 350 naira to 700 naira in black market, depending on the locations. Abubakar Abdullahi, Trust TV News, Lafia.
I am a woman.
I need a voice. A voice to change the world.
Making it a better place. Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up. To secure the future, stand up.
As we celebrate this year's International Women's Day,
we demand gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow.
All right, thank you for staying. If you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. Today is International Women's Day, and this is, you may say, Daybreak special, focusing on women today, just to honor women and also spotlight some very, very important conversations around how to break the bias according to the theme of the year. We have in the studio Faith Mwadishi, the Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy, and she's been giving us perspectives on some of the things that we need to do. Now, before we went on the break, in shaping opinions and thoughts, the media plays a very critical role. The media here, I mean, broadcast media, film production, entertainers, even music and the likes. So all of those are channels for which a society's opinion is being shaped and molded. How critical is their role in this?
Very, very critical. Why I say that? Because a lot of people rely on the media for information, and the media is a huge influence on the values that we have on issues. Now, media has comfortably transformed the woman into a commercial entity. If you look at adverts, if you look at films, what they do is those films that they want to sell, those commodities that they put the woman in front, they use the woman as the object for commercialization of everything. So that sinks into people's psyche, and they're like, oh, if I am a woman, it means that I can commercialize my structure, I can commercialize my body, and to get whatever it is. That's a wrong signal that you are sending out. And what that does to a society is that the society begins to think that it is when you want to promote something, not when you want to sit down and take decisions, that you should bring in women, dress them in certain ways, describe them in certain ways, and it goes out there. And the media is helping to push a lot of these narratives out there. So it's important that we think back and begin to have programs that promote the ability of women to take hard decisions, to work in the hard sector. Like the sector where I work, the extractive sector, for instance, there are issues around women's participation in that. And people say, oh, this is a hard sector. Nursing is a soft sector. Teaching is a soft sector. Let the women go there because that's the caregiving sector. Women are portrayed as caregivers rather than decision makers and all of that. So while we are talking about the home, we just talked about education, the media plays a much more important role than all of that. Whatever, even as adults, most times we listen to, watch the media, read in the media, and it helps to influence our decisions and the way we think about things. Look at those commercials, for instance, where you have females who are the lead actors when it comes to commercials. But when it comes to nation building, decision making, you hardly find the women. They are very few. Even when you find them sitting around the table, it is the men who are coming out, taking all of those decisions. So it's important that we begin to change some of these narratives that we have and the kind of image that we portray of the woman out there for society to imbibe. It plays a lot of role. The media is very important across the value chain of nation building.
But the issue with that is that women themselves have to see reasons why that has to change, isn't it? It looks like a good number of women have come to settle for this, narrative that has been painted about them. They seem to have been limited, by this image of, oh, okay, at most what I can do is to use my body, to gain access to whatever, I want to have access to gain whatever kind of, position I would like to attain in life and all of that. So what's the responsibility on women themselves,
If you look at the population of women who feel that way, it's really insignificant compared to the population of women who are coming out now and speaking, even younger women who now understand. For so many years, there was this ignorance about what the woman can do. But we forget that going back to the early 1900s, again, even in Nigeria, let's take the Eastern Nigeria, for instance, before the Aba Women's Riot of 1929, women held positions. Women held positions, and what led to that riot was because the colonial masters felt that women were wielding too much power, wielding too much strength. They now brought in warrant chiefs who were taking decisions, making decisions to sideline the women, coming out with a new census agreement, wanting to count the number of women, number of children, number of cattle, so that they can have taxes. And that was what triggered the Aba Women's Riot of 1929. So where women have grown up in a society where it is like when you push yourself to come out, the society pushes you back and say, oh, it is not your time, this is not where you belong. It becomes a part and parcel of the people to say, okay, this is the alternative way to go, because there's that narrative around there. But in the last few years, let's say in the last 5 years, or let's say in the last 10 years, this narrative is beginning to change. People now understand that, oh, even as a woman, I can aspire to whatever position I want to aspire I can become whatever I want to become. Take myself for instance. I didn't go to read civil engineering because I was so interested in civil engineering. I didn't know anything about it because it was a man's field. And I had a father who believed that, oh, okay, you can actually do whatever you wanted to do. And I have never practiced civil engineering for one day, you know, but I went there just to prove a point at a very young age. And there are so many people like that. So the narrative is actually changing. It's not right to say a lot of women now feel that, you see, a lot of young girls wanting to make impact in their society, wanting to be known. And the narrative at community level, let me just quickly drop this point.
Because now, these days, if you take the role of social media, for instance, if you go on Instagram, for instance, if you go on TikTok, for instance, you are likely to see more women dancing and shaking their bums than men, you know.
But that's media. That's media. That's the same thing I was talking about. Media being an influencer, the way they have portrayed it.
And it's the women doing it themselves, actually.
No, because
not
that's
anybody compelling
that's
them.
the psych. That is psych. That when you have lived in a situation for a very long time, you imbibe it and you begin to showcase it. The media, the social media, is another form of media. Even though people now turn to the broadcasters themselves, kind of. To put it out there. When you take a statistics of the adverts, that if you go to advertisement companies and do a survey, those adverts that get viewership, that get patronage, are those adverts where they have showcased women as commercial entities. But what I'm trying to say is that while that is happening, the narrative is beginning to change, that as a woman, you can aspire to be to whatever position you can aspire to be, especially as an African woman. Having seen somebody like Sirleaf Johnson, who was president of Liberia, we have our own Okonjo-Iweala. So, and then we have our own Amina Mohammed that is at the United Nations. So, before now, young women in Africa didn't know that they could aspire to those kind of positions, because growing up, what they tell you is, oh, you're going to get married, you're going to become the man's wife. There's no need for your parent to invest on you by going to school. Now, you find a society where even when women are trying to break all of these barriers and make way, you still have laws that keep them back, that want to keep them back there. So what would the young people will do? The young people will look at, okay, if this is what is available for me, let me begin to do that. Can you imagine if the National Assembly had passed those 5 laws? It would have done a 360 degrees. It would have done a 360 degrees in the orientation of a lot of young people. So that the content you now begin to see will be content that will be projecting them as per decision makers instead of commercial entities of a particular subject, and that's why you see that. And then another thing, if in the social media, even young people are beginning to criticize that you don't have to expose yourself to get viewership. People, they call it clout chasing. So what you need to do to clout chase is to do something out of the extraordinary.
What are the chances that if you do other things than as a woman? What are the chances that if you do other, creative things and more intelligent things, than, shaking your bum and all that, what are the chances that you are likely to get those followerships?
No, the fact that you may not get those followership, but that if you have laws, for instance, if you have laws in the country that enables you to do those things and showcase those potential, and you are recognized for doing those things, the narrative will change. You begin to get the followership, because people are looking for how to ease themselves, how to just take away stress, and they find solace in those videos, those social media contents that they have. Rather, most times, if you even put that intellectual material out on social media, you hardly get any kind of engagement. But when it concerns scandals and all of those kind of content, people want to, because there is no enabling environment for that growth to happen. Once we have that enabling environment for that growth to happen, I tell you, the narrative will change, and it's beginning to change, though, but not as much as we want it to change.
But the women have a responsibility as well.
Yes, we do have a responsibility, and part of the responsibility is myself coming here to talk about it and having this kind of content in the media. and changing the narrative. If, for instance, we have, okay, let's take, for instance, now the National Assembly had passed this. Definitely, there will be promotion on how to make sure that women cover those seats. There will be promotion about issues around indigenship. You don't have to worry about whether you're going to marry from a particular state, you're leaving your state. You know, those kind of things will now begin to form the kind of content that will help to grow and change the values of our young girls that are coming up, to ensure that if you get the right education, you get the right exposure, you can actually be recognized by government, you can be recognized by your community, and you can aspire to become whatever you want to aspire to become.
All right, well, thank you so much. At this point, we'll just end the discussion on the program. Thank you for coming and joining us on Daybreak. Yes, we've been speaking with Faith Nwadishi, the Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy, on this special day of International Women's Day. You may say this is Daybreak Special, specifically focusing on women. Zainab?
It's really, really interesting, you know. I feel so excited to be a woman, as women are being celebrated today. And I want to appeal, you know, to the men folks to celebrate women, appreciate women, love women. Women are treasures, I would say.
Well, interesting. Well, for me, I would say bye for now. In case you've missed part of the show, you can also catch up with us on our social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This has been aired live every single day. Thank you. Make it a date with us tomorrow on the program again. My name is Ayuba Ilia.
And I'm Zainab Bala. See you tomorrow.
Bye.